Hi. Thanks to 5-Pin Universe, we, the avid bowler, athlete, coach, instructor, has had the benefit of being able to watch all of the Western Canadian Pro Tour events online, from qualifying rounds to championship match play to final championships. Everything has been available to us. That's awesome. That has really led to an opportunity to view the athlete in a competitive setting. And for me, what it's done is give me an opportunity to talk with you about what I believe are some learning opportunities for all of us. So, having said that, this particular session will be complex, long. It will involve a lot of, I think it's fair to say, rhetorical questions. It would be nice if we were able to have a Zoom conference for this particular session so that we could all have a discussion and a give and take. But obviously that's not possible right now. So here goes. I'm calling this session the Bettors line of the Pro Tour from an instructional perspective. Like you, I have viewed many of the qualifying rounds provided by 5-Pin Universe, many of the championship match play rounds provided again by 5-Pin Universe. Their dedication to providing that exposure has valuable lessons for all of us. I'm hoping this session will help you from an instructional perspective. First up, I want to ask you my first rhetorical question. If you walked into a bowling center and watched the qualifying rounds, just randomly came in, not expecting to notice or meet people, you're not busy in conversation with other people, you're just walking in to observe the bowlers in action. Let's say there were 4 qualifying rounds, so let's say you came down and you watched 2 of those qualifying rounds. I wonder what would stand out to you from an instructional perspective. Then, let's say that you came back to watch the championship round, and you watched the championship round either live or through video feed. I wonder, what would you notice different about those top 16 players at the Chinook Autumn Open? It's just called the Autumn Open now, my apologies, through Paradise Lanes. What would you notice? There are some stark contrasts, ladies and gentlemen, from the qualifying rounds that took place and the championship round of the top 16 at the 2021 Autumn Open. And rest assured, those differences hold true every single year. Every year. I don't even think there's rare exception. Every year, those differences are very stark, very obvious. I'd be interested in having that conversation with you to find out what you found, but here's my read. First up, through the qualifying rounds, I watched probably an hour worth of the qualifying rounds, of 3 of the qualifying rounds. 3 things stood out. 1, I guesstimate that about 80% of the bowlers were using a pre-shot routine. That's good. My question there is, what were you doing within that pre-shot routine? How did you use the pre-shot routine to help you in being prepared to execute your shot? That's what the pre-shot routine is all about. It's about helping you keep your focus, providing you some, stability in terms of the process you use to prepare for each shot. So I'd say about 80% of those athletes during the qualifying rounds used a pre-shot routine. The question is, why and how did they use it? So, number one. Number two, I'd say that most of those people in the qualifying round, most of them truly sucked at follow through. I ignite no apologies. I watched over an hour of film, 3 qualifying of the 4 qualifying rounds. Ladies and gentlemen, my general analysis is the bulk of those bowlers truly sucked with their follow through. Interestingly, I would propose to you that follow through may not suck as much when they're at their own bowling center playing in their league. But once you enter into a competitive component, we sometimes deteriorate, sometimes our execution deteriorates. And that would be because of a mental challenge. But ultimately here, my message is, ladies and gentlemen, most people's follow-throughs through the qualifying rounds, which remember, 211 people, 211 people, but 211 different registrations in qualifying. I don't know what that equates to in terms of how many actual individuals, but there were 211 entries, I believe, in the qualifying round. Some of those were repeat entries of 2, 3, and maybe even 4 for some. I don't know. That's costly. $200 a crack. That's a costly expenditure. Anyway, so pre-shot routine was pretty good, but my question remains, how did they implement it? What were the benefits they were taking or using for their pre-shot routine? Next, the follow-through sucked. And my third observation, there was a small group of people who had the complete package. That complete package was represented by the quality of their follow-through and their mental approach to the game. Now, how can I know anything about their mental approach? I'm sitting here in my office or watching it in between, television shows on commercials, and I'm tuning in. How can I say that? Because of the way they carried themselves, because of what was evidenced by what they did between their frames, from what little exposure the camera view could give me. All right? Ultimately, the big win was in their preparation leading into their turn. So, here's the trick. My big message here, 16 people in the qualifying round, invariably every single year, hold their follow-through. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the most important criteria you can come away from with this particular session. Other things, other aspects of our follow-through, of mentally being prepared for this, etc., etc. Okay, I will try and share with you during this time, but understand the most important physical criteria you can add to your game is to hold your follow-through. All right, so qualifying round, vast majority of the bowlers sucked at holding their follow-through. So let's say that we turned that on its head and everybody was holding their follow-through. What can those people expect that don't typically hold their follow-through? The ones that back away from the follow line as soon as they throw the ball, the ones that throw the ball and stand up almost right away or get it carried away with body language almost immediately upon release. What could be the benefit for those people that have chosen to hold their follow through when they'd not done that consistently before? Well, there's a few benefits. First up, you're going to hit the middle more. You're going to hit your point of aim more, and you will hit your target, the pins that you're aiming at, more often. There's some other things that'll come up that'll challenge you. One, let's say a 200 average bowler that never held their follow through. Let's say that they hit the middle 70% of the time. By holding their follow through, I'm confident that they will see that bump up to 75 to 80% just simply by holding their follow through. While if you're holding your follow through and hitting the middle 80% of the time, rest assured you are going to get a few more strikes. But you're also going to get something else. You are going to get an increase in unsparables. Just by the nature of the beast, because you're hitting the middle more frequently, you are going to get more unsparables. That's a bit frustrating, right? And that leads to the third element. So first up, by holding your follow through, you end up hitting the middle more often. You end up hitting your point of aim more often. You end up hitting the pins you're aiming at more often. Secondly, you end up increasing your unsparables just by the nature of the beast. You're on the middle more. After all, even when I was bowling and hitting the head pin 90 to 92% of the time with my first ball, I was only getting 52% strikes, 53 far, maybe on a good day, 55% of the time strikes. The rest of the time, I was getting spares. On any one particular year during my best years, I was averaging between 280 and 302. And that's probably spanned 15, 20 years. However, there is a distinct difference here, please. Hitting your point of aim, hitting your arrow by the simple realization that you're holding your follow through will lead you to have more unsparables. However, those unsparables also bring to you another challenge. Vulnerability. Why would I use a word like vulnerability? Because you see, hitting the middle is great. We want that, all right? But there's a trade-off. We're going to have more unsparables. So that sets us up to potentially see ourselves in a vulnerable state, because now that I'm hitting this middle more often, I want to improve past that. And to improve past that, I have to embrace that I am hitting the middle more often and that I am getting more unsparables, which leads me to know that I need to work on my game more. The vulnerability. The vulnerability issue is understanding that even though you are hitting the middle more now, you have an increase in unsparables. So if you want to take the next step, get into the next level, you need to work at your game, and particularly work on the consistency of your release and the consistency of your rotation. Holding your follow through is influenced by three factors: speed, lift, and rotation. And each of those factors influence how the ball moves down the lane. So the consistency of your speed, lift, and rotation has a dramatic effect upon the quality of your follow through. Vulnerability can be easily beaten down if you accept the challenge of being able to take yourself to the next level by working on your game. And that particularly means working on the consistency of your speed, your lift, and your rotation. All right? So there you have it. Session 1. Done. Now, we're going to take a bit of a break. And when I come back with session 2, we're going to explore what else can you do as an athlete or an instructor, coach, wanting to be ready to help your athletes in a competitive environment. So stay tuned. We'll be back for session 2.